Welcome back to another episode of the Drift Car Build-Off presented by SPEC Clutch and Koyorad.
We finally get our S54 ready to go back in the E46 M3, including our new clutch and flywheel. Oil plan in place. This overhaul is getting close to complete, but we still have lots of little details to take care of. We replaced a bunch of stuff in the process, like these pulleys for the accessory belts or the alternator belt. They were completely baffed, so we put new pulleys on. We put in a new oil pan gasket. We put in a new front cover seals. So she's getting pretty fresh, and one of the other things we're going to do is replace the seal on this constant pressure valve. This little guy, which I don't even know exactly what its job is, to be honest. I'm sure you guys...
It's like a weird relief valve inside the motor for oil pressure, I think.
Okay.
I think?
Yeah, it's outside of my world of experience, but she lives in the block back here, and there's a seal on it, which is notorious for leaking.
And I think ours was, because that part of the engine was like really wet, right?
No, you're right. It was really dirty there. And you can actually see the seal that is on here is the original seal, and it's really quite crushed. And when Pete first pulled this out of the block, we could see there was like rust sort of encroaching over top of the seal. So I'm pretty sure this thing was leaking, and our friend Ben at Hack Engineering sent us this Viton seal, which replaces this one and apparently fixes the problem and is good for the life of the motor. So quick, easy fix here to a leaky area in the back of the motor where it could easily trick you into thinking you've got like a leaky rear main seal, for example. So check your CPV valve first before you go change out your rear main seal.
And we should say it's a difficult job to do actually when it's in the car.
It would be.
This is the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, you can see it's like buried under the headers here at the back of the engine bay. So yeah, now is the time to do it. So let's swap that in there and then we'll move on to some other little jobs.
Would you look at how old and crusty the seal is? I actually had to just cut through it, but the elasticity is gone. It just wants to crumble. Like, look at that. Falls apart. There we are. New seal is in place. And for those of you out there, you can't really take this thing out with a screwdriver. So I was using like this huge, flat, large socket to take this in and out. As you can see, it fits pretty well. So if you don't have that, you may need to go out and get it. Ours was particularly rusted in there too. But now that it's out, I don't think I'm gonna have any issues putting it back in. Next up on the hit list, engine mounts. And I had a lot of debate as to what to get for engine mounts. There's a lot of good solutions out there, albeit very expensive ones, which is something I don't think is well spent on this car right now. Honestly, I would have reused the stock ones, but we broke that other one, so we did need to buy a set. I thought about buying polyurethane ones, but I've dealt with them in the past and I just don't like the NVH. Like, they definitely add a lot of vibration at idle. Some people said the 90 duration ones won't, but anyways, after a lot of thinking back and forth, I ended up buying these Anchor ones from Rock Auto. So this is like a cheap replacement, and when they arrived they looked decent. However, I did notice there's quite a bit of play in them. And I'm suspecting that these are regular E46 ones. They're not M3 specific, despite them being listed in the items for order on the M3. So what I think I'm gonna do is grab some of this premium urethane sealer. I think it's a rubber-based sealer. And I'm just gonna fill this area out here just to give this a little bit more stiffness. And then we shall install them and go from there. And if we figure out that they're really causing a lot of rock or this didn't help enough, then maybe we'll replace them afterwards. There we are. We've got some seam sealer in there, and we're gonna let this dry for, who knows, a day or two, because we've got a lot of work to do. So we'll get back to you on how much stiffer these mounts actually are, probably closer to the end of the episode.
And now I think it is time for us to bolt the ITBs back on here, because these were actually pulled by Moose before we pulled the motor, because he was thinking we're going to yank the engine, not the subframe. So we can actually bolt these back on here right now. We don't need to do it in the motor because we're putting it back up through the bottom of the car. So without further ado, I think this is a time-lapse job, so let's get to it.
ITBs are on. We're one step closer to putting this thing back in the car, but before we can do that, we need to install our clutch and flywheel. Obviously, with this series being sponsored by SPEC Clutch, we're using a SPEC Clutch. This is their Stage 3 kit, the exact same kit that we used on our 350Z. And if you watched the episode where we installed the clutch on that car, you'll know why we went with the Stage 3. But if you didn't watch that, let me recap quickly now. Typically, with a drift car, you're going to put a lot of heat into the clutch with clutch kicking and the general, aggressive downshifting that you might do and that kind of thing. And so stock clutches, not going to love that. In fact, we originally were planning to go with SPEC Stage 2 Plus kit, since that's what we run on a lot of our track cars. But in talking with Dave at SPEC Clutch about it, he recommended stepping up to the Stage 3, not for its higher torque capacity. This will hold, I think, 580 foot-pounds, but for the friction material that they use. The 2 Plus has a lot of ceramic in it, and it doesn't tend to like the extreme heat spikes that you get when clutch kicking, where this has a lot of carbon in it, and that does much better with the heat. So that's why he recommended going to the Stage 3. He also felt that it wouldn't affect streetability. He says this is one of their more streetable clutches for its torque rating, and I have to agree now that I've tried it in the 350Z. That car drives extremely well on the street with the Stage 3 clutch in it, so I would have no reservations recommending this to you guys, even if you're street driving your drift car like we are. So yeah, that's a quick summary of the clutch itself. Obviously, it's got a blue pressure plate that will do the job there, and perhaps more importantly, we went with their aluminum flywheel. This is a single mass setup, does away with the big clunky dual mass setup like the 350Z had as well, and it also has this replaceable friction surface on it, which I think is a kind of a cool feature. And obviously it's a lot lighter than the factory stuff. In fact, we weighed this whole combination and it was 24 pounds, and we weighed the whole factory combination, it was 37 pounds. So we are saving 13 pounds with this setup, which is never a bad thing for throttle response. Maybe even frees up a bit of horsepower. Got the flywheel in position here, so it's time to bolt it down, and we're gonna use medium thread locker on it in this fancy twist container. And it's
Seen that before, DP?
Made of gel. It's a magical new device that Permatex has invented. So excited to use that. It's weird, the things that excite us around here. Then obviously clutch, pressure plate, and we're good to go at that point. So let's get to it. Bolted down to spec. Pull out your alignment tool. By the way, we should mention that SPEC was kind enough to mark where these are balanced together with this white bit of paint here, so we got those aligned properly. Torque spec on the clutch plate is 25 foot-pounds, on the flywheel 77 foot-pounds. I think that's all it. Just don't forget to put in your dust shield here. I forgot to do that on the Celica, so luckily that motor's been in and out enough that I fixed that problem, but don't forget that.
If you watched one of the previous episodes, you know that our clutch pivot pin was broken, and I just removed what's left of it, which is that amount. There should be a piece of plastic that looks somewhat close to this. This is Ben from Hack Engineering. He makes this clutch pivot pin. It is metal, which is going to be much better than the plastic part. I mean, you can go buy one from BMW, but the odds are that after a while it's going to break again. So metal is definitely, I think, the better choice to go. So we're just going to push that in like that. And we just have to lock in our pivot arm here, and then we're going to put that on there, which is our release bearing from SPEC. So I've got a little bit of work to do there to just get that all seated properly. And finally, check out this tub of multi-purpose grease from Valvoline DP.
Enough to last a lifetime?
Yeah, I think I misordered it. I was gonna order the 1 pound, but I got the 4 pound. So we're gonna make sure this is all very well lubed up. Actually, I'm not gonna do this right now because I almost forgot I have something else to show you guys. So that's what we're gonna do on the front side of the gearbox. On the back side here, there are also a couple small little modifications. First, I don't even know what this is called. It's like the Guibo.
I don't know.
I thought the Guibo was in the middle of the drive shaft, but I don't know. It's a rubber damper.
Yeah.
And if you look at this one, this is the one that was on the car. It has many a cracks. It feels more like plastic than rubber. So I went on Rock Auto and ordered this one, brand new one. And I think that is worthwhile doing, especially because we're going to be doing a bit of clutch kicking, I'm sure, and whatnot. So I want to make sure that this is a good piece. And the other item that I'm going to replace are the transmission mounts down here. If you see, they have a ton of flex. They're actually known for that. There's a lot of companies out there that make replacements. However, I found what is arguably the cheapest budget replacement. This is, again, from Rock Auto, and it is a thicker, much stiffer mount that comes from, I think it was like a 1975 E12, I think, BMW 320i. That's what the name was, or that's the model that I think I needed to use. Now comes the part where we fit our transmission to our engine. What do you think, DP? I think everything's lined up.
I think it's time to manhandle it on there, man. There's no way around it.
All right.
Let's just do it.
Let's see here. It's actually amazing how light this transmission really is.
Yeah.
Maybe if you want to, let's see if I can do this solo.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do here is just lift this thing up. Line it up here, get it into the...
There we go.
Oh, it's on, almost. It's on the first stage here.
Yeah.
We're in. Okay.
Oh,
wow.
It's in.
Come on.
Too easy.
That was too easy. Wow, that was so simple.
No suffering required.
None at all. Transmission is bolted in place. If you're wondering, the E-torques, the large ones, we torqued to 65 foot-pounds. The medium-sized ones were 40, and the small ones were 22. So there's one last thing left to kind of finish off this whole package here, and that is the motor mounts that I talked about earlier in the episode. As you can see, that sealer has dried nicely, and there is definitely less play there, which is nice. So I'm hoping that's going to work out. So let's get these bolted on, and then we can finally move on to getting the subframe onto here, which we also have to do a couple of modifications to.
Before we put the engine back in the car, we are going to tune up the front subframe here a bit because these two locations where the engine mounts go are prone to cracking, either from heavy use at the racetrack, or if the engine mounts or the tranny mounts go bad on you, it puts a lot of stress on these on this location, and apparently that causes cracking. So we went to our friends at Bimmer World, who make this reinforcement kit. It is obviously just a nice piece of metal.
Laser cut or water
metal,
cut?
probably something like that. It's fairly thick. I don't know what the gauge of it is, but it's obviously strong enough to do the job because Bimmer World knows what they're doing. Those guys have won a lot of racing championships in their day in this chassis. So that gets welded on there, I think, PT. I think this one gets welded on over here.
Betcha.
So you got some prep work to do to strip the paint off there and get it ready for welding, and then you'll get to it. But before that, we should also show off these new inner and outer tie rods that we've got. And that, my friends, is why we changed these out, because this one has a fair bit of play in it. That one's not as bad, but well, we've got everything out of the car. We might as well do them both. PT worked his magic welding in those reinforcements from Bimmer World. So this is ready to get bolted back onto the car.
Like a new rack again.
It is a new rack. It's beautiful. I even power washed it a few episodes ago. There's nothing we like better than a freshly cleaned rack, and a reinforced one at that. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. We appreciate all the support. Give us a thumbs up for more E46 M3 rehabilitation. And don't worry, this will be a drift car soon. We just got to get it back in one piece. And then we're going to the racetrack. We're going to do some skids, maybe in the snow or in the ice, but one way or the other, we will hit the racetrack as soon as we can. All right, guys, thumbs up. Go buy some swag. Help us pay for all these drift car parts. SpeedAcademy.shop.